The Grand Conclave happened once every 100 years. Every vassal species of the Valorian Empire gathered at the throne world to renew their oaths of loyalty. They came from across the galaxy, representatives of 47 conquered peoples, to kneel before their masters and remember their place in the universe. Emperor Tyreth VII sat upon his floating throne, looking down at the assembled delegates with cold satisfaction. His scales shimmered under the artificial lights of the Grand Assembly Hall. Behind him, holographic displays showed the might of the Imperial Armada. 10,000 warships protected the throne world. Nothing could threaten Valoria Prime. Nothing had threatened it in 12,000 years. The Valorians had conquered the galaxy through simple methods. They found younger species, crushed their defenses, and absorbed them into the Empire. Resistance meant extinction. Compliance meant survival, though survival under Valorian rule was often worse than death. The Emperor raised one clawed hand, and silence fell across the vast hall. Millions watched through broadcast screens on 1,000 worlds. This moment belonged to him, as all moments did. "You gather here to remember," Tyreth said, his voice carrying through speakers that reached every corner of the chamber. "You remember that the Empire is eternal. You remember that your worlds exist because we allow them to exist. You remember that loyalty is rewarded and defiance is punished." The delegates bowed their heads. Some trembled. Others had learned to hide their fear behind masks of obedience. A few actually believed in the Empire's greatness, having known nothing else for generations. Tyreth continued his speech, listing the Empire's achievements, its conquests, its eternal glory. He spoke of the natural order, where the strong ruled and the weak served. His words were the same as his father's words, in his grandfather's before that. The Empire did not change. Change was unnecessary when you had already achieved perfection. Then the alarms began. At first, it was a single warning tone from a junior officer's console in the Orbital Defense Command. Then more alarms joined it. Within seconds, every military station in the system was screaming alerts. The Emperor's speech stopped. His golden eyes narrowed as one of his admirals rushed forward, breaking all protocol by interrupting the sacred ceremony. "Your Majesty," Admiral Cross gasped, falling to his knees, "something has appeared in high orbit. It bypassed every sensor, every defense grid. We detected nothing until it was already here." "Impossible," Tyreth hissed. "Nothing enters this system without our knowledge. Nothing." "I know, Your Majesty, but the readings are confirmed. A single vessel, configuration unknown. It appeared from nowhere." The Emperor gestured sharply, and a holographic display materialized before him. It showed Valoria Prime from orbital view, with the defensive fleet surrounding it like a protective shell. And there, sitting calmly among them, as if it had always been there, was a ship. It was not the largest vessel in the display. Imperial dreadnoughts dwarfed it in raw size. But something about its shape made the Emperor's scales ripple with unease. The ship's lines were wrong somehow. Its geometry suggested capabilities that his military advisors could not identify. Dark metal absorbed light rather than reflecting it. No running lights, no visible weapons ports, just a silent presence that had appeared from nothing. "What species?" Tyreth demanded. "What faction? Who dares enter our space without permission?" Admiral Cross swallowed hard. "The signature analysis is complete, Your Majesty. The ship's origin has been confirmed." "Then tell me." "It is human." The word hung in the air like poison. Around the Grand Assembly Hall, delegates began to murmur. Most species knew of humans only through Imperial records. A primitive species confined to a single star system on the galaxy's edge. Violent, unstable, too dangerous to integrate, too insignificant to destroy. The Empire had placed sensor buoys around their system 3 centuries ago and promptly forgotten about them. "That is impossible," the Emperor said slowly. "Humans do not have faster-than-light travel. They do not have the capability to reach our space. They are primitives." "The signature is confirmed, Your Majesty. Human origin, no doubt." Tyreth stared at the holographic display. The human ship sat motionless among his fleet, making no aggressive moves, responding to no hails. His warships had surrounded it, weapons trained on its hull. One word from him, and it would be dust. But something held him back. The ship had appeared from nowhere. That meant technology the Empire did not understand. And the Emperor had not held power for 60 years by acting rashly against unknown threats. "Hail them," he ordered. "Demand their surrender and explanation." Communications officers worked frantically. Minutes passed. The human ship remained silent. The delegates in the Grand Assembly Hall watched the displays with growing fear. Many had never seen their masters uncertain about anything. Then the ship responded. The message was simple, transmitted in perfect Imperial standard. "We request permission to send a diplomatic shuttle. We wish to talk." Admiral Cross looked to his Emperor. "Your Majesty, I advise extreme caution. We know nothing about their capabilities. They should not be here. The fact that they are suggests technology we cannot counter." "One ship," Tyrus said quietly. "They sent one ship into the heart of our empire. Either they are fools or they are supremely confident." He paused, considering. "Grant their request. Let them send their shuttle. Let them talk. We will learn what we need to know, and then we will destroy them. And if they are a threat, then we will make an example of them. The galaxy will watch humans die, and every species will remember why they do not challenge the Empire." Permission was transmitted. Within minutes, a small shuttle detached from the human vessel and descended toward the Imperial Palace. Every weapon in the system tracked its path. Interceptors flanked it. If the humans made any wrong move, they would be vaporized before they could blink. But the shuttle flew straight and true, requesting landing coordinates, following every protocol as if its occupants had done this 1,000 times before. In the military command center, a junior analyst named Vorith stared at her console with growing horror. Her superior officers were focused on the shuttle, on the diplomatic implications, on defending against possible treachery. They were not looking at what she was looking at. The human battleship's power readings. Imperial sensors could detect the energy output of any vessel. Weapon systems had distinctive signatures. Shields required massive power. Engines burned fuel that could be measured. Every ship in the known galaxy followed these rules. The human ship was not following these rules. Its weapon system showed zero power draw, completely offline. Its shields were minimal. Its engines were idle. The only significant energy expenditure came from life support systems and basic operations. What Imperial sensors were detecting, what had terrified every military analyst who saw the readings, was not the ship at full power. It was the ship at rest, the ship doing nothing, and it was outputting more energy than an Imperial dreadnought at battle stations. Vorith tried to report her findings, but her superiors were busy. The Emperor was preparing to receive the human delegation. The moment seemed more important than sensor readings. She filed her report and hoped someone would read it. The shuttle landed in the Imperial hangar bay. Soldiers lined the path from the landing pad to the palace, weapons ready, eyes hard. They expected monsters. They expected giants. The humans had a reputation for violence that even the Valorians respected. What emerged from the shuttle was something else entirely. 5 figures in simple gray uniforms walked down the ramp. They were smaller than Valorians, soft-skinned, without claws or scales or natural armor. They carried no visible weapons. They had no guards. They looked around at the assembled military might with expressions of calm interest, as if they were tourists admiring local architecture. The lead figure was a woman with dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. She smiled politely at the soldiers pointing weapons at her face. She did not flinch. She did not hurry. She walked through the corridor of armed warriors as if strolling through a peaceful garden. At the entrance to the Grand Assembly Hall, an Imperial herald blocked her path. "You stand before the throne of Emperor Tyreth Thuremth, ruler of the known galaxy, master of 47 species, commander of 10,000 warships. Show proper respect." The woman's smile did not waver. "My name is Chen Wei, and I serve as ambassador for the United Human Coalition. Please inform the Emperor that we appreciate his hospitality and look forward to productive discussions." The herald stared at her. He had expected fear. He had expected groveling. This small, soft creature was treating an audience with the most powerful being in the galaxy as a minor appointment in her schedule. "You will kneel," he said. "I will not," Chen Wei replied pleasantly, but I will be happy to shake his hand if he offers it." She walked past him before he could respond, her small delegation following. They entered the Grand Assembly Hall, where millions of eyes watched their approach. The emperor sat upon his throne, surrounded by his court, his power displayed in every direction. Chen Wei walked to the center of the hall and stopped. She looked up at the emperor without fear, without submission, without any of the emotions he expected from lesser beings. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space, "thank you for receiving us. Humanity has waited a long time for this conversation." The emperor leaned forward, his golden eyes burning with cold fire. "You will explain how you are here, you will explain how you escaped your containment, and then you will beg for mercy." Chen Wei tilted her head slightly. "I think there may be some confusion, Your Majesty. We were never contained. We simply had not chosen to leave yet." She smiled that calm, confident smile. "But now we have, and we have so much to discuss." In orbit, junior analyst Vorith finally got someone to look at her sensor readings. Admiral Cross stared at the numbers for a long moment. Then he quietly ordered his staff to recalculate, certain there had been an error. There was no error. The human ship sat among the Imperial fleet like a wolf among sheep. Its weapons were still offline, its shields were still minimal, and its idle power output suggested that if it ever decided to wake up, nothing in the system would survive. The Empire had believed it held all the power. The Empire was wrong. The Grand Assembly Hall had never been so quiet. 47 vassal species watched as a small human woman stood before the Emperor of the known galaxy and refused to kneel. The silence stretched until it became painful. Emperor Tyrath's claws gripped the arms of his floating throne. His scales had darkened with anger, a warning sign that every Valorian knew well. Lesser beings had been executed for smaller offenses than this creature had already committed. "You claim you were never contained," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Explain." Ambassador Chen Wei folded her hands before her, the picture of diplomatic calm. 300 years ago, your empire placed sensor buoys around our solar system. We detected them within 6 hours of their deployment. We studied them. We learned from them." "Impossible. Our technology is far beyond your primitive capabilities." "It was," Chen agreed. 300 years ago, we were just beginning to explore our own system. Your buoys used principles we had only theorized about. Faster than light communication, quantum sensors, energy systems that made our best technology look like children's toys. She paused. "We are very good at learning." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that primitives reverse-engineered Imperial technology?" "I expect nothing, Your Majesty. I am simply telling you what happened. We took apart your sensor buoys. We understood their principles. Within a decade, we had our own working prototypes. Within 50 years, we had improved upon them." Chen's smile remained pleasant. "Your empire gave us the keys to the stars. We are grateful for that, even if it was unintentional." Whispers spread through the vassal delegations. Many species had struggled for centuries to understand scraps of Imperial technology. The idea that humans had mastered it so quickly seemed impossible, and yet a human ship sat in orbit that had bypassed every defense the Empire possessed. "If you had this capability," Tireth said slowly, "why did you not leave your system? Why did you hide?" "We did not hide, Your Majesty. We watched, we listened, we learned." Chen's expression shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "We learned about your empire. We learned about the 47 species that serve you. We learned about the tribute systems that strip worlds bare. We learned about the slave camps where children die mining metals for your warships." Her voice remained calm, but her words cut through the hall like knives. Several vassal delegates flinched. Some looked at the floor. Others stared at the human woman with expressions of desperate hope. "We learned about the extinction campaigns," Chen continued. "Species that resisted and were wiped from existence. Worlds burned until nothing lived. Cultures erased because they refused to kneel." She looked directly at the Emperor. "We have watched for 3 centuries, Your Majesty. We know exactly what your empire is." Tirath rose from his throne, his full height towering over the human delegation. "You dare lecture me? You dare judge the Empire? I could destroy your world with a single command. Your entire species would cease to exist." Chen did not step back. She did not flinch. She looked up at the furious emperor with something that might have been pity. "You could try," she said quietly, "but I would not recommend it." The words hung in the air. Several admirals exchanged glances. The Imperial Guard tightened their grips on their weapons. In 3,000 years, no one had ever threatened the Emperor in his own throne room. "Your ship is surrounded," Tirath hissed. "My fleet could reduce it to atoms in seconds." "Your fleet has been trying to destroy our ship for the past 10 minutes, Chen replied. "Admiral Cross ordered the attack while we were walking to this hall. Every weapon in your orbital defense network has been firing continuously. Would you like to see the results?" She gestured, and a holographic display materialized from a small device in her palm. The image showed the human vessel, the steady hand, sitting calmly in space. Around it, Imperial warships were unleashing everything they had. Plasma beams, kinetic rounds, missiles by the hundreds, nuclear weapons. The steady hand was undamaged. The attacks were not even reaching its hull. Some kind of barrier, invisible until weapons struck it, was deflecting everything. The ship had not moved. It had not returned fire. It simply sat there, enduring an assault that would have destroyed a small moon. "Our shields are designed to handle significantly more than this," Chen said. "We appreciate the stress test." Emperor Tirath stared at the display. For the first time in his reign, he felt something he had not experienced since childhood. Fear, not for himself, but for everything he had built, everything his ancestors had built. "What do you want?" he asked. Chen dismissed the holographic display. "We want to address the conclave, all 47 species. We have an offer to make, and we believe they deserve to hear it." "What offer?" "That is for them to hear, Your Majesty, not for you to approve or deny." Tirath's scales rippled. "You are in my empire, in my palace, surrounded by my soldiers. You do not make demands here." "We are making a request," Chen corrected gently. "A polite request. We could have made demands. We could have arrived with a fleet instead of a single ship. We could have destroyed your orbital defenses and landed troops on your world. We did not. We came with words instead of weapons. We ask only for the chance to speak." The Emperor looked at the vassal delegations. They were watching with an intensity that disturbed him. For generations, these species had been docile, broken, accepting of their place beneath Valorian rule. Now he saw something dangerous in their eyes. Hope. "And if I refuse?" Chen's expression softened. "Then we will leave. We will return to our space and continue watching. But Your Majesty, the vassal species have already seen our ship. They have already seen it survive your weapons. They will wonder what we wanted to say. They will wonder why you silenced us." Questions like that have a way of spreading. It was a trap, and Tirath knew it. If he refused, the vassal species would believe the humans had offered them something valuable, something their masters wanted hidden. If he agreed, the humans might say anything, might plant seeds of rebellion that would take generations to uproot. But he was emperor. He had crushed rebellions before. Words could not threaten an empire built on warships and soldiers and the willingness to destroy worlds. "Very well," he said. "Address the conclave. Say whatever you wish. It will change nothing." Chen bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. We will speak tomorrow at the morning session. Tonight, with your permission, we would like to return to our ship." "You may go." Tirath sat back on his throne, already planning. Tomorrow there would be assassins in the hall. The humans would die mid-speech, and their ship would be destroyed by weapons currently being transported from deep storage. Ancient weapons. Forbidden weapons. Weapons that had cracked planets open. Chen turned to leave, then paused. She looked back at the Emperor with an expression he could not read. "Your Majesty, one more thing. We have been watching for 300 years. We have learned everything about your empire, your weapons, your defenses, your secret projects and hidden facilities. We know about the planet crackers you are thinking of using. We disabled them 50 years ago." She smiled that calm, infuriating smile. "We are not your enemies, Your Majesty. We do not want war, but we did not come unprepared. Please remember that before tomorrow." The human delegation walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall. 5 small figures in gray uniforms surrounded by thousands of hostile warriors. They walked without fear, without hesitation, as if they owned every step they took. In the aftermath, the vassal delegates gathered in small groups, whispering, what did the humans want? What would they offer? Was escape from the Empire truly possible? For the first time in millennia, hope had entered the hearts of the conquered. And hope, the Emperor knew, was the most dangerous weapon of all. That night, Tyreth summoned his most trusted advisors. Plans were made. Orders were given. By morning, every trap would be in place. The humans would die, their ship would be destroyed, and the Empire would continue as it always had. But in her quarters aboard the Steady Hand, Ambassador Chen Wei received reports from human operatives already inside the Imperial Palace. She knew about the assassination plans. She knew about the hidden weapons. She knew about every move the Emperor was making. 300 years of watching had not been idle time. Human agents had infiltrated every level of Imperial society. Human technology had penetrated every Imperial system. The Empire thought it was setting a trap. It had no idea that it had been walking into one for 3 centuries. Chen reviewed the morning speech one final time. Tomorrow she would offer the vassal species something they had not had in generations. Tomorrow she would light a fire that would spread across the galaxy. Tomorrow everything would change, and the Emperor, for all his power and fury, would not be able to stop it. The night passed slowly. Soldiers moved through corridors. Weapons were positioned. Assassins took their places. The Empire prepared for violence. Above it all, the Steady Hand floated in silent orbit, waiting. Its weapons remained offline. Its shields held steady against the continuous assault from Imperial vessels. It made no aggressive moves. It did not need to. The real weapons were not missiles or beams. The real weapons were words. And tomorrow those words would shake the foundations of everything the Empire had built. Morning came to Valoria Prime, though the artificial light of the throne world made such distinctions meaningless. The Grand Assembly Hall filled once again with representatives of 47 conquered species. They had barely slept. Rumors had spread through the night like fire through dry grass. The humans were going to speak. The humans had survived weapons that should have destroyed them. The humans had an offer. Emperor Tyrus sat upon his throne, outwardly calm, inwardly furious. His assassins were in position. His secret weapons were ready. The moment the human woman said anything treasonous, she would die. Her ship would be destroyed. Order would be restored. The vassal delegates watched the empty speaking platform with desperate intensity. Most had lived their entire lives under imperial rule. Their parents had lived under imperial rule. Their grandparents had been conquered or had died fighting. Freedom was a concept from old stories, something that existed only in whispered memories. And yet here they were, about to hear a species that had defied the Empire and survived. Ambassador Chen Wei entered the hall with her small delegation. She wore the same simple gray uniform as before. She carried no weapons, no shields, no visible protection. She walked through rows of Imperial guards as if they were decoration. She reached the speaking platform and looked out at the assembled delegates. For a moment, she said nothing. She simply looked, meeting eyes across species boundaries, acknowledging each delegation with a small nod. Then she began to speak. I am not going to tell you about humanity today. You do not know us, and our story is long. Instead, I want to ask you some questions. Her voice carried clearly through the hall, amplified by hidden speakers. Every word reached every ear. Chen turned to face the Vorix delegation, a species of small, quick beings known for their engineering skills. The Vorix, your homeworld, had rings of ice that reflected your twin suns. Your poets wrote songs about how the light danced across your cities. Do you remember those songs? The Vorix delegate, an elderly female, stared at the human with wide eyes. The rings were destroyed, she whispered. 200 years ago. The Empire mined them for resources. I know, Chen said softly. We have recordings of them, taken from probes we sent decades ago. Would you like copies? The Vorix delegate's hands trembled. She could not speak. Chen turned to the Thren delegation, massive beings with stone-like skin. The Thren, your world had mountains that touched the clouds. Your children climbed them as a rite of passage. How many children have made that climb in the last century? The Thren delegate's voice rumbled like distant thunder. None. The mountains were leveled for ore extraction. I know, Chen said again. We have images of them. We know what you lost. She continued around the hall, addressing each species by name. She asked about homeworlds, about traditions, about children and families and cultures. She asked about slave camps and tribute demands and relatives who had disappeared into imperial labor programs. Some delegates wept openly, others sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. A human, a stranger from a distant world, knew their histories, knew their pain, had watched them suffer and remembered when no one else did. Emperor Tyrath's claws dug into his throne. Enough of this sentimentality. Make your offer or be silent. Chen turned to face him. Your Majesty, with respect, these people deserve to know that someone noticed what was done to them. Someone remembered. Someone cared. The Empire does not require your pity. These species serve their purpose. Their purpose, Chen repeated, to mine your metals, to build your ships, to die in your wars, to exist only as tools for Valorian glory. She shook her head slowly. That is not a purpose. That is slavery. Gasps echoed through the hall. The word had been spoken, the word that no vassal species dared to use. Slaves rebelled. Slaves were punished. Loyal subjects served willingly and were rewarded with survival. You speak treason, Tireth said coldly. Guards, seize her. Imperial guards moved forward. Chen raised one hand and they stopped. I have not finished speaking, Your Majesty. Please allow me to complete my address. The guards looked to their emperor. Tyreth's golden eyes burned with rage, but he nodded slightly. Let her condemn herself fully. Let every word be recorded as justification for what came next. Chen turned back to the delegates. Humanity has watched your empire for 300 years. We have seen its power. 10,000 warships, trillions of soldiers, weapons that can crack planets and darken suns. By any measure, the Valorian Empire is the greatest military force the galaxy has ever known. She paused. And it is dying. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Tyreth leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Your technology has not advanced in 4,000 years, Chen continued. Your ships use the same designs they used when the first vassal species was conquered. Your weapons fire the same beams. Your shields block the same attacks. You have not needed to improve because you have not faced a challenge. She gestured broadly at the assembled might of the Empire. This is a power built on fear, obedience enforced through terror, and terror only works when subjects believe resistance is impossible. Chen looked directly at the Emperor. We are here to tell them that it is not impossible. Tyrath stood, his full height casting shadow across the platform. One ship. You came with one ship, and you believe you can challenge an empire? We came with one ship because we wanted to talk first, Chen said. We came with one ship to show that we are not interested in conquest. We do not want your throne, Your Majesty. We do not want your empire. She turned to the vassal delegates. We want to offer you a choice. The hall fell absolutely silent. Any species that wishes to leave the empire may do so, Chen said clearly. Any world that seeks independence will have it defended. We will not ask for tribute. We will not demand slaves. We will not require you to worship us or serve us or die for us. We offer only this: freedom, the right to determine your own futures. The silence stretched. Then, like a dam breaking, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted. Some called out questions. Others argued among themselves. The Valorian court screamed for order. Imperial guards moved through the crowd, trying to restore silence. Tyreth's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Enough! The hall fell quiet. This is treason, the Emperor said. This is rebellion. You offer my subjects the chance to betray me, and you expect to walk away alive? He gestured sharply. Destroy the human ship. Kill this woman. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who challenge the Empire. High above Valoria Prime, the Imperial fleet received its orders. Weapons that had been firing continuously finally received authorization to use maximum force. Planet crackers came online. Ancient technologies, weapons that had not been deployed in millennia, powered up for the first time in generations. And then they powered down. Admiral Cross stared at his display in confusion. Override codes had been entered. Not Imperial codes, something else. His weapons were locked out. His ships were receiving commands he had not issued. In the Grand Assembly Hall, assassination teams moved to strike. Every light in the hall went dark. For 3 seconds, absolute blackness filled the space. There was no sound, no movement, just darkness and silence and the racing heartbeats of thousands of beings. Then the lights returned. Every Imperial guard in the hall was unconscious on the floor. The assassins had collapsed where they stood. Even the Emperor's personal bodyguards, elite warriors enhanced with the best technology the Empire could provide, lay in crumpled heaps. The human delegation had not moved. Chen Wei stood on the speaking platform, exactly where she had been, her calm expression unchanged. "Your Majesty," she said quietly. That was the polite response. It was non-lethal. "Your soldiers will wake up with headaches but no permanent damage." She paused. "Would you like to see the alternative?" Tyrath stared at the scene before him. His guards, the finest warriors in the galaxy, defeated in 3 seconds of darkness. His assassination teams, trained for decades, disabled before they could strike. And the human woman had not even moved. "What are you?" he whispered. Chen's expression softened slightly. "We are humans, Your Majesty. We spent a very long time fighting each other. We became extremely good at it. We learned how to win wars and how to prevent them. We learned that the deadliest weapon is not the one that destroys, but the one that makes destruction unnecessary." She gestured to the unconscious guards. "This is a demonstration, a small one. We could have killed them. We chose not to. We could have destroyed your fleet. We chose not to. We came to offer a choice, not to start a war." From his command station, Admiral Cross finally got his communications working. His voice came through to the Emperor, transmitted directly to his neural implant. "Your Majesty, we have a problem. Multiple contacts appearing at the system's edge. Human signatures. Hundreds of them." Tyrath's scales went pale. "Our weapons are still locked out," Cross continued. "I have no control of the fleet. Whatever they did to our systems, I cannot reverse it. We are defenseless." Chen Wei watched the Emperor process this information. She could have gloated. She could have threatened. Instead, she simply waited. "The fleet at the edge of your system will not attack unless you give us no choice," she said. "They are there to ensure this conversation continues peacefully. They will leave when we leave." She stepped down from the speaking platform and walked toward the Emperor's throne, stopping at a respectful distance. "We are not your enemies, Your Majesty. We do not want to destroy your empire. We want to change it. We want these species to have the freedom they deserve, and we want you to understand that fighting us would be the worst mistake you could ever make." Tyrath looked at the unconscious guards, at the locked-out weapons, at the fleet that had appeared from nowhere. He had ruled for 60 years. He had never felt so powerless. "You have made your point," he said finally, his voice hollow. "What happens now?" Chen smiled gently. "Now, Your Majesty, we continue talking. We have so much more to discuss." In the Grand Assembly Hall, vassal delegates stared at the human woman who had just brought an empire to its knees without firing a single shot. They did not understand what they had witnessed. They did not know what came next. But for the first time in generations, they believed that something could come next. Something other than eternal servitude. And that belief changed everything. Emperor Tyrath had ruled from a position of absolute power for 60 years. His word was law across 1,000 star systems. His armies numbered in the trillions. His fleet darkened the skies of conquered worlds. Now he sat on his throne surrounded by unconscious guards, watching a small human woman explain how she had just ended his reign. "We do not want to rule your empire," Ambassador Chen said again. "We want to dismantle it. There is a difference." "The result is the same," Tyrath replied. His voice was calm, but his claws gripped his throne hard enough to leave marks. "Without the empire, there is only chaos. These species will tear each other apart without our guidance." "Perhaps," Chen acknowledged. "Freedom is dangerous. People make mistakes when they can choose their own paths. But those mistakes are theirs to make. That is the point." The vassal delegates watched this exchange in stunned silence. Many had expected violence. They had expected the humans to strike down the Emperor or the Emperor to somehow destroy the humans. Instead, they were having a conversation. It was perhaps the strangest thing anyone had ever witnessed in the Grand Assembly Hall. Your Majesty, one of Tyrus' advisors said carefully, perhaps we should continue this discussion in private chambers. No, Chen said before the Emperor could respond. These species have been excluded from decisions about their own fate for too long. Whatever happens next, they deserve to see it. They deserve to understand. Tyrus' eyes narrowed. You presume to give orders in my palace? I make requests, Your Majesty. You are free to refuse. But I think you are beginning to understand that refusing does not always produce the outcomes you desire. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Around him, his court waited in terrified uncertainty. The rules they had lived by for generations no longer seemed to apply. Power had shifted to somewhere they could not see, controlled by forces they did not understand. Very well, Tirath said finally. Speak. Tell me how you plan to destroy everything my ancestors built. Chen nodded respectfully. We have been inside your systems for a long time, Your Majesty. Over a century. Not to sabotage, not to steal, simply to watch and to prepare. When we arrived yesterday, certain programs activated. Nothing harmful. Just administrative changes. Administrative changes, Tyrath repeated flatly. Your communications networks now route through human relay stations. Your military command systems accept human override codes. Your defense grids respond to human commands. Chen spread her hands apologetically. We did not want to use these capabilities. We hoped you would listen to reason, but you ordered attacks on our ship and assassination attempts on our delegation. We had to respond. Admiral Cross's voice came through the Emperor's neural implant again. Confirmed, Your Majesty. We have lost control of every critical system. Our technicians cannot even identify the intrusion points. It is as if the modifications were always there. They were, Chen said, somehow hearing both sides of the conversation. We have been very patient. Tirith rose from his throne. He was a massive creature, twice Chen's height, covered in scales that could deflect blades, with claws that could tear through armor. He walked toward her slowly, each step deliberate. I could kill you myself, he said quietly, right here, right now, without weapons or soldiers, simply my hands around your throat. Chen looked up at him without fear. You could try, Your Majesty. But even if you succeeded, what would change? We are not a single person. We are a species. Kill me, and another ambassador will come. Kill them, and another. You cannot murder your way out of this situation. I have murdered my way out of many situations. Against species that did not know you were coming. Against worlds that could not defend themselves. Against enemies that believed resistance was futile. Chen shook her head slowly. We are none of those things. We have known about you for 3 centuries. We have prepared for every scenario you can imagine, and many you cannot. Violence will not save your empire, Your Majesty. Only cooperation can do that. Tyrath stopped an arm's length from the small human woman. He could end her life in a second. Every instinct demanded that he do so. But something in her eyes, some absolute certainty, made him hesitate. What do you mean, cooperation? He asked. Chen took a small step back, giving herself room to breathe. The empire will end. That is not negotiable. These species will be freed. Your military will be reduced. Your tribute systems will be dismantled. These changes will happen whether you participate or not. Then what cooperation do you offer? The manner of the transition. If you fight us, there will be war. Your fleet against ours. Your soldiers against ours. You will lose, but many will die on both sides, and the vassal species will suffer in the crossfire. Chen's voice softened. If you cooperate, the transition can be peaceful. Your people can have a place in the new order, not as rulers but as equals, citizens rather than masters. Tyrith laughed bitterly. You expect Valorians to accept equality with lesser species? I expect Valorians to prefer survival to extinction, yes. Chen's tone remained gentle. Your species is not evil, Your Majesty. You did what powerful species often do. You conquered because you could. You ruled because no one stopped you. We are stopping you now, but we do not want to destroy you. We want you to become something better." The Grand Assembly Hall held its breath. The Emperor of the known galaxy stood face to face with a small human diplomat, and the fate of 1,000 worlds hung on his response. Tyreth turned away from Chen and looked at his court, his advisors, his generals, the loyal servants who had supported his reign and his father's reign before him. They looked back at him with expressions of confusion, fear, and something that might have been hope. "If I refuse," he said slowly, "you will destroy us anyway." "We will dismantle your empire," Chen corrected. "We will remove your power to oppress others, but we will not commit genocide. We will not destroy your worlds or murder your children. That is not who we are. And you expect me to believe that?" Chen reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed a planet, blue and green and beautiful, orbiting a yellow sun. "This is Earth," she said, "our homeworld. For most of our history, we did exactly what your empire does. We conquered, we enslaved, we destroyed. We fought wars over resources, over religion, over simple hatred. We came very close to wiping ourselves out several times." The display shifted, showing images of destruction, cities in flames, mushroom clouds, devastated landscapes. "We learned," Chen continued, "slowly and painfully, we learned that conquest does not create lasting peace. We learned that fear does not create true loyalty. We learned that the only way to build something permanent is to build something that people choose to be part of." The display shifted again, showing a different Earth. Clean cities, green forests, people of different appearances working together. "We could have conquered the galaxy when we discovered your empire. We had the technology, we had the power. We chose not to because we remembered what conquest costs. We remembered the blood and the pain and the endless cycles of revenge." Chen deactivated the device. "We came here to break the cycle, Your Majesty, not to continue it." Tiras stared at the space where the hologram had been. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the hall, including Chen Wei. He sat down on the floor. The Emperor of the Valorian Empire, ruler of 1,000 worlds, sat on the cold stone floor of his own throne room like a tired child. "I have reigned for 60 years, he said quietly. "I have done terrible things. I have ordered exterminations and watched worlds burn. I told myself it was necessary. I told myself it was the only way to maintain order." He looked up at Chen. "Was I wrong?" Chen knelt down to meet his eyes at the same level. "Yes, Your Majesty, you were wrong, but so were your ancestors and so were ours. The question is not whether we were wrong. The question is what we do now that we know better." Around the hall, vassal delegates watched in amazement. The monster who had haunted their nightmares for generations was sitting on the floor, looking lost and old and very, very tired. "What do you want me to do?" Tirath asked. Chen placed a hand on his shoulder. It was a small gesture. Human to Valorian, conqueror to conquered, but in that moment, it meant everything. "Help us build something better," she said. "Help us show the galaxy that change is possible. Stand beside the species you once ruled and prove that even emperors can learn." The silence stretched. Then Emperor Tyreth VII, last ruler of the Valorian Empire, nodded slowly. "Tell me what to do," he said. In orbit, Admiral Cross watched his displays with growing confusion. The human fleet at the system's edge was not advancing. The human vessel above the planet was not attacking. His own systems remained locked out, but no violence had been offered. He had expected war. He had prepared for war. Instead, he was witnessing something far more dangerous. He was witnessing peace, and he did not know what to do with that. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Ambassador Chen Wei stood and offered her hand to the fallen emperor. He took it, and she helped him rise. The vassal delegates began to murmur among themselves. Some wept, some laughed, some simply stared, unable to process what they had seen. The empire was ending, not in fire and blood, but in conversation and choice. It was stranger than any of them had imagined, and it was only the beginning. The fall of the Valorian Empire did not happen in a single day. It unfolded over weeks and months, spreading from Valoria Prime across 1,000 star systems like water finding its level. News traveled faster than ships. Within hours of the Emperor's surrender, recordings of the Grand Assembly Hall were being transmitted across the galaxy. Vassal species watched in disbelief as their eternal masters sat down and admitted defeat. They watched as a human woman offered freedom to anyone who wanted it. They watched as the impossible became real. On some worlds, celebrations began immediately. Statues of Valorian governors were torn down. Flags that had flown for centuries were burned. People danced in streets that had known only fear for generations. On other worlds, the response was slower. Freedom was a strange concept for species that had never known it. What did it mean to choose your own leaders? What did it mean to control your own resources? What did it mean to exist without tribute demands and slave quotas and the constant threat of extinction? Human ships appeared in system after system, not as conquerors, but as witnesses. They brought food and medicine and engineers. They offered help without demanding payment. They answered questions without making promises they could not keep. Ambassador Chen Wei remained on Valoria Prime, managing the transition at his source. She slept 4 hours a night and spent the rest in meetings. Former imperial officials sought her guidance. Vassal representatives demanded justice. Military commanders needed to know what to do with their ships and soldiers. The hardest conversations were with the species who wanted revenge. The Thren, whose mountains had been leveled for ore, demanded that Valorian worlds be devastated in return. The Vorics, whose ice rings had been destroyed, called for the extinction of their former masters. A dozen other species listed ancient grievances and demanded blood. Chen listened to all of them. She did not dismiss their pain or minimize their losses. She simply asked questions. If we destroy their worlds, how are we different from them? If we murder their children, what does that make us? If we become what we hated, have we really won? Some delegates stormed out in anger. Others wept with frustration. A few sat in silence, wrestling with feelings they had carried for generations. The Thren representative, a massive being named Korath, was one of the angriest. His people had lost everything under imperial rule. His own family had died in the mines that consumed the sacred mountains. "You ask us to forgive," he rumbled. "You ask us to accept them as equals. Do you know what they did to us?" "I know," Chen said quietly. "We have records of everything. Every death, every atrocity, every child who never grew up. We watched, and we remembered. Then how can you ask us to show mercy?" Chen was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled up a holographic display showing images from human history. Wars, genocides, concentration camps, mushroom clouds. "My species did these things to each other," she said. "We killed millions of our own kind over differences that seem meaningless now. We came so close to extinction that we still tell stories about it to our children." She switched the display to show something different, a ceremony. Humans of different appearances standing together, signing documents, shaking hands. And then we stopped. We chose to stop. We looked at what we had done and decided to become something else. She met Korath's eyes. "It was the hardest thing we ever did. It took generations. Some days we still struggle with it, but it was possible. Change is always possible." Korath stared at the images of human reconciliation. His species had been taught that humans were violent primitives, too savage for galactic civilization. Now he was learning that they had faced the same darkness his people felt and found a way through. "How?" he asked finally. "How do you stop hating?" "You do not stop," Chen said honestly. "The anger does not disappear. The grief does not fade. But you can choose what to do with those feelings. You can choose to build instead of destroy. You can choose to create a future where your children do not have to feel what you feel." The conversation lasted for hours. Korath did not leave converted to peace. His pain was too deep for that, but he left thinking, which was more than he had done when he arrived. Similar conversations happened across the galaxy. Human diplomats met with species after species, listening to their stories, acknowledging their suffering, and gently suggesting alternatives to revenge. It did not always work. Some conflicts erupted despite human efforts. Old enemies fought old battles. Blood was spilled. Worlds burned. But more often, something remarkable happened. Species that had been conquered together found common ground. Former rivals became allies. The shared experience of imperial oppression created bonds that had not existed before. A council formed not from human design, but from the natural gathering of freed peoples. Representatives from dozens of species met to discuss their shared future. They argued about boundaries and resources and governance. They disagreed about almost everything, but they were disagreeing as equals. They were making their own choices, and that was something new under the galactic sky. The humans were offered leadership of the council. They refused. They were offered tribute in gratitude. They refused. They were offered territory, military alliances, exclusive trade agreements. They refused everything. "We did not come here to build a new empire," Chen explained to the confused council members. "We came to end empire. If we take control, even with your permission, we become what we fought against." "Then what do you want?" asked the Vorix representative, an elderly female named Tessith, who had wept when Chen mentioned the ice rings. Chen smiled. "Friendship, trade, the chance to explore the galaxy alongside you instead of watching from a distance. We want to be neighbors, not rulers." "That seems like very little, considering what you have given us." "It seems like everything to us. You cannot imagine how long we have waited to meet you as equals rather than observers." The council debated for days. In the end, they established the Galactic Assembly, a loose federation of freed worlds with no single ruler. Humanity was granted a seat equal to every other species, no more and no less. The steady hand remained in orbit over Valoria Prime for 3 months. Its presence served as a reminder and a deterrent. Former Imperial hardliners who considered rebellion knew that human warships were watching, but the ship never fired its weapons, never used its power for anything beyond passive protection. On the day it finally departed, former Emperor Tyrath requested permission to come aboard. Chen granted it. The fallen ruler walked through corridors designed for human bodies, forcing him to stoop and squeeze through doorways meant for smaller beings. He did not complain. He simply observed, taking in the technology that had defeated his empire without firing a shot. "I have a question," he said finally. "You had this power for 300 years. You could have conquered us at any time. Why did you wait?" Chen led him to an observation deck where he could see the stars. "Because conquest is easy. Building something that lasts is hard. If we had come as conquerors, the vassal species would have simply traded one master for another. They needed to see that another way was possible. They needed to choose it for themselves. You spent 3 centuries preparing for a conversation? We spent 3 centuries preparing for every possibility. Conversation was our first choice. It worked mostly. There were moments when we nearly had to use other methods." Tyrath nodded slowly. "The ancient weapons, the planet crackers. You said you disabled them 50 years ago. Were you telling the truth?" Chen's expression was unreadable. "What do you think?" The former emperor laughed bitterly. "I think I will never know for certain, and that is exactly as you intended." "Perhaps." Chen gestured at the stars beyond the observation window. "Your people have a choice now, same as everyone else. You can try to rebuild your empire. You can seek revenge for what you have lost, or you can become something new. And if we choose wrong, then we will be watching same as before, and we will intervene if necessary." Chen's voice was gentle but firm. "We do not want to be your enemies, Tyrath. But we will not allow another empire to rise. Not yours, not anyone's. The era of galactic domination is over." Tyrath stood in silence for a long time, looking at stars that had once belonged to him. Then he asked the question that had haunted him since the Grand Assembly Hall. "Why? Why do you care what happens to species you never met? Why spend centuries preparing to free strangers?" Chen considered the question carefully before answering. "Because 300 years ago, we looked at the stars and saw suffering. We saw billions of beings living in fear. We saw worlds dying and cultures vanishing. We could have ignored it. We could have stayed safe in our own system and pretended it was not our problem." She turned to face him directly. "But we are human. And being human means looking at suffering and choosing to do something about it, even when it terrifies us. Even when it costs us everything. Even when the odds seem impossible." She smiled slightly. "We are very stubborn that way." The steady hand departed Valoria Prime that afternoon. It carried Ambassador Chen and her delegation back toward human space, their mission complete. Behind them, a galaxy struggled toward freedom, stumbling and falling and picking itself up again. The journey ahead would be long and difficult. Old wounds would take generations to heal. New conflicts would arise. Mistakes would be made. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the future was not written by emperors. It was being written by the people who lived it, one choice at a time. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a human battleship sailed home, its weapons still offline, its purpose fulfilled. They had come with chaos and left with hope. It was the most human thing possible,